Hello and welcome to Clay to Canopy, the show where I attempt to make just about everything from the ground up. And welcome to the Don't Make the Dragon Interior Makes series. I've made platters, I've made plates, but I have no way to serve these things. So in this video, I am making some hand-carved spoons and some bent lamination tongs. So come on, let's do this. To make my tongs, I am going to start off making a jig, and I have just something round that I'm going to trace for the top loop, a ruler to make the side bits. I'm using this MDF to make my jig. I'm hoping that I can get 2 layers out of this one, so I'm going to try and do this a little bit on the tight side. I have a big sheet, but I don't feel like digging it out and cutting it up, so hoping that I can get enough here. So let me measure this and see. So I need to leave myself a little room up here, but I also want to make sure I have a decent amount of bend. So my tongs will be on the outside of that. I need to determine how much my thickness is going to be, but I think I can get away with doing a double tong, like a double bend. I'll have a smaller one on the inside and a larger one on the outside. So let's see, I want to determine what my tong thickness will be. I don't think it needs to be that thick. I think I can get away with a 1/4 inch thickness. A couple sheets of this stuff as the divider. Let's see, where's my thickness here? About a 32nd. 2 sheets is a 16th. 2 sheets should be, you only need 1 divider. Let's just go with just over a 1/2 inch. This right here, this is my negative space. I need to cut all of that out. And I think I'm going to just do this on the bandsaw, but I'm going to drill a couple holes here and here, maybe there and there, so that my bandsaw has an easier time. I want to retain this piece, so I'll be cutting on the inside of this, and I'll sand that up because this will pop into the whole thing, and that's going to be my jig. So I'm going to cut up my strips, and I will just be using a pair of scissors to do that. I will cut 1 inch strips. Alrighty, choppy choppy. The last thing I need to do to prep my molds is to tape them up so that the glue does not stick. So I have these 2 little pieces that are what is known as culls. They're going to go in between these 2 so that I get 2 different bends that don't stick together. Because these are so small, I think I'm just going to tape everything. First off, I'll do the cavities, and then I will just go around everything, the whole thing, covering them in tape. Burnish my tape. Sure, basically I'm rubbing the heck out of it to make sure it really gets a good stick. I have done some really detailed bending videos, so I'll link those in the description if you're interested. This is a little bit more of a quickie rundown of me doing this, so I'm not going to go step by step over what I would normally do for bending. I've done both vacuum bending and regular bent lamination. This one's going to end up being a regular one. I have taped down my lamination strips to one end on this piece of plastic that I have set up, and I pulled out a board just to keep me flat because I was having issues with this thin piece of I guess masonite, melamine, Luan, sorry, jeez, my words. The thin piece of Luan that is down that I've been using to protect the tabletops, it's getting potato chippy and was creating issues. I needed a flat surface and now I have one. I'm gonna be doing this with the resin. Resin's okay for food to sit on top of. I'm gonna be using the mica with this, so the in-between lamination lines will have a little bit of the green mica. Here we go. All right, do not want to move this. It needs to sit and dry. It is unmolding time. I could not wait, and I unmolded one of them because I had this nightmare in my head of like whether or not the resin was going to be too rigid and I wouldn't get a good clamp, but it works. So I had to get out here and unmold this because in my head I was like, oh no, I used the resin and the resin was gonna harden and I was gonna have no flex, but I'm very pleased that the thinness of this, and I have a great amount of flex and we're good to go with the clamping. There's a heck of a lot of cleanup that needs to be done, so I'm gonna unmold this last one. Once the resin has hardened, it is food safe. It is okay to come into contact with food. Now, I would not use resin for cutting boards, something that you're gonna be actually slicing into, but cheese boards in my case, making cheese boards or any kind of those like to put stuff on top of that you're not going to be cutting on is more than fine, and therefore will be more than okay with these. And I did a bit of sanding. There's not going to be much contact of the resin left. It's just a very subtle bit of green that you'll see because the rest of this is going to be sanded up. I think this was birch veneer that comes on through. So yeah, it was a bit tricky getting it out of here. An awful lot of glue. Thankfully those hulls did their job. Come on. Try not to slice a finger because resin is sharp. Alright, these are going to get set aside for cleanup because I am feeling like I need to move on to starting in on those spoons. I really want to carve some spoons, and I also need to bust out the Cricut first because I have ideas about engraving this aluminum flashing for some little medallions that go at the end of the spoons. And I'll need that first before I can begin carving the spoons. So I'm gonna clean this up, bust out the Cricut, and be right back. So if this works, this could save money. Aluminum flashing is pretty inexpensive. You can get it at Home Depot, a big roll of it. I want to say it's well under $20 for the roll, and there's so much of it versus buying the little bits that they sell at the craft store to do engraving on. Of course, those come pre-cut and you'd have to cut your own. But for what I'm going to be using it for, I'm just going to be engraving some of this to make some medallions that will get glued onto the ends of my spoons. I brought out some of my house spoons just as a reference so that I could gauge what I want to look like for size. So I'm going to give this a whirl, see if I can get this to engrave. I've pulled up on my screen a couple of medallions. One is my artist stamp, I should say my older artist stamp, which is a make-believe with the swirl. I have a newer artist stamp that I have created for myself, which is an oak leaf with the air sign. And then I have the dragon head silhouette that I also have going on. I have done the engraving step by step on the computer and showed you what all of the background looks like in a previous video when I made the brooms. I'll link that in the description if you want to take a look at that. But basically I have the Cricut canvas page open where I have imported my images, my SVG files, and I have just changed them from basic cut to say engrave instead, and I have loaded in my engraving tip. So here we go. Asking me to set aluminum sheets, and my engraving tip is in. And away we go. Here's hoping. Ooh, these are a bit big. I think I'm gonna have to shrink them down. They look good. I just think that they're a little bit too large for my spoons. So I'm gonna take another go at shrinking them down. All right, so I'm gonna take this off. I have some enamel paint I'm gonna test out. No idea if this is gonna work. It works, but it's just so light. Black would be better. Let me see what I can go find. I'm gonna go with black nail polish, but I have to work quickly. Honestly, doesn't make a freaking difference. We're skipping it. All right, never mind. I'd probably have to carve this a little bit deeper to widen my lines, but it is what it is. I'm just gonna go with it. It's subtle enough. I like that the carving is there. On the spoon, you'll be able to see it if you look close enough. It's these tiny little details that really make the work for me anyways. And I found that using just a basic pair of scissors is best to do the cutting here. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do that. Alrighty, so I have a board of some, what is this? Birch. I have a board of birch wood, and I have made myself a little spoon template, and I'm gonna go ahead and carve that on here. Now, I've decided that I wanna route out the spot for this, so that way I can sink it down and cover over it with some resin, and it'll give it a nice seal into the piece. If I'm gonna be routing, I wanna route the board before I go cutting down the spoon. So I'm gonna trace out where I want things to go, and then I will cut this down to size and bust out the router so I can go ahead and mark out my routing parts. When you carve spoons, you use a mallet and some gouges to carve your cavities, but since I have the router out to recess these parts, I'm just gonna have it help me do some of the work so that it's less work when I get down to the gouging part. So I am doing a little bit of stepping. I've taken that first layer, the same rise as that, and I'm gonna go in and step this down a little bit. Now I'm gonna hit them with the gouge. Working away, and my grinder, which I knew was kind of on the edge, it basically crapped out on me. The gears were stripping, so I had to stop what I was doing and quickly order some new tools. Yeah, I could have come in and did the hand carving, but the hand carving just wasn't doing it for me. I really love using grinders when I do my carving. I don't even own that many gouges. I own enough to do little bits of things here and there, but for the most part I usually rely on doing the majority of my carving with the grinder and my microplane. I have always wanted a die grinder, basically a smaller version of carving that I would normally do on the angle grinder. So I ordered the die grinder while I was ordering the angle grinder, and I ordered a bunch of new heads for them. I have an air die grinder, but I don't like turning on the compressor. It's just loud. Sometimes it's just, I don't know, it's more than what I want it to be. I needed an electric one. I am actually going to start off with the die grinder to add in a little bit more of my hollowing out these spoons. I had Sarah take a look, and the weight is pretty heavy because this is the heartwood of the birch, but the spoon part of it really needs to be kind of hollowed out a little bit more, shallowed out more. And I just was not getting the results I wanted with the angle grinder anyway because the flap wheel is pretty large. I just cleaned this area, and I have a baby boy sleeping here. So I'm gonna head to the outside area. I also purchased a sanding drum that can come in and help with the sanding. I was able to do a cursory pass on my tongs, but I could not get into the inside, so I will also be doing that. It's a pretty straightforward process at this point. I have a very coarse burl bits, less coarse burl bits, and a fine. These will act as strong file or rasp would do to take away material. So let's go to it. Headphones on and to work, to work. Before I do the final sand, I want to seal in these medallions. So I'm just going to use clear resin, regular resin I've been using for everything, and resin it into place. Then when it hardens, I can come in and do the rest of my top sanding. And I gotta bust out a heat gun to deal with these bubbles. When I mixed up too much freaking resin. And it's time to get my sand on. Okay, I have treated all of my utensils with a butcher block conditioner. Now this is usually a first go. There is an oil, it's mineral oil that you use to treat your wooden utensils and your butcher block, but that is after it's already been seasoned. I've applied a layer of this stuff and let it soak for 24 hours. Now I'm gonna do a bit of buffing, which is just to take a cloth and kind of rub on in any of that excess oil that might be on there. And then I'm gonna be hitting this with some wax. I am gonna be using this cutting board wax that is food safe for these utensils. The oil is a penetrating stuff. This butcher block conditioner is similar to an oil. It's like an oil combined with the wax. It penetrates into the grain of the wood and absorbs into it, so it really becomes one with the wood. The wax is basically a top coating. So the wax puts on protective finish that sort of goes over the top of it and seals in the pores. Each one will get wiped down just like I did. The solid wood spoons absorbed much more of the oil than the tongs did because the tongs are made with the resin, and the resin acts as a water barrier or like a moisture barrier. Pretty much only the bits that are exposed in the wood is what absorb that layering of the butcher block conditioner. But the reality, the functionality of these things, your spoons may be sitting in something with liquid or in some sort of food that would be longer term. Tongs tend to be picking up things that are pretty dry, right? You're not going to be like using tongs usually for stews and stuff. So I'm okay with just getting a little bit of oil on there to add an extra bit of protective coating, and then the wax on when it comes to the tongs. When you're applying wax, I like to use a rag that is clean, and I'm just applying that wax. You periodically want to reapply, reseason your butcher block or your wooden tools, and you can go directly to the butcher block oil, which is the straight up mineral oil, it's cutting board oil, which you can buy at most hardware stores. Even some kitchen area stores will have it. Probably can get it at Target and Walmart, I'm sure. If not, you could always just go to the pharmacy area and buy yourself some mineral oil, because that's basically what it is. Food grade mineral oil, yeah. I think it's sold as a laxative. So I'm just let the wax go on, and then I'm gonna go back and rebuff. All right, I'm gonna do one of my tongs. I really, really love the way that the resin turned out with this little medallion that's in there. It looks really great. It turned out better than I expected. Alrighty, we are gonna buff that out. I'm gonna repeat this process with the rest of my utensils, and then they are ready to go to load into the dragon. So yeah, let's do this. Yay, my beautiful spoons and tongs. Spoons and tongs for serving. I love the way they look. They turned out so good. So good, so good. Awesomeness, awesomeness. Where are they gonna live? Maybe that extra basket, huh? Maybe this isn't a trash can after all. Maybe this is a place to stick utensils. Ooh, that's nice. That's nice, that's nice. How about that? How about that? It's gonna have to be like a sorting out where stuff goes kind of sitch. Slowly but surely, more things keep appearing into this dragon, and she is getting done, getting done. Alrighty, I am gonna call this one here. I hope you enjoyed utensil making, serving spoons and serving tongs video. Please like, share, and subscribe if you have not done so already. Stick around to watch this project all come together, and remember, don't wake the dragon.